Hello, everybody. I'm going to explain my poem "Unicorn Legend," which was my third last post, I think. Anyways, one of the my patrons, Rebecca Stewart, noted how she liked my poetry, but she didn't understand it fully, or she felt like she didn't understand it fully. So today I'm just going to go through that particular poem and explain my thinking process. So here we go. All right, first of all, this poem was inspired by a photograph. I saw this photograph online of a whale a whale carcass that had been just rotted down to the bone, but it was in a forest, right? So it's like it was a very kind of puzzling image that was very interesting, and it made me think a lot. Well, how did that whale get there? So this poem kind of explores things that happen on larger time scales and compares them to kind of the smaller time scale of our lives and the people we meet and love. So the first lines, there's whalebone where the deer roam, of course, the whalebones in the forest, a carcass stranded and blanched. So there's only bones left, and the bones have been blanched by a sun. Perhaps the forest is new. So if it's been there quite a long time, then it's had time to blanch or get much paler. Where it landed from a sea no longer. Of course, the sea is no longer there. Whales, of course, live in the sea. Is the wind getting stronger? So that is just a question about the present, right? Like, oh, I noticed the sound of the wind through the leaves. The leaves break it up, the wind, and the sky fills with floating fluff from the cottonwood trees, making today seem like a dream. That particular stanza is inspired by Toronto Island, actually, because if you go there in the summer and you walk around, in the spring especially, there's all this fluff floating around, and it's kind of magical in a way. It kind of reminds me of that scene from the movie Legend by Ridley Scott, with Tom Cruise, which has unicorns. That's why I called this Unicorn Legend. Also because the unicorn's a very rare creature, and this photograph capturing a whalebone in a forest is kind of rare too. You don't see that a lot. So I'm kind of thinking of this image as I'm walking through in the present through this kind of magical cottonwood fluff floating around. Cottonwood fluff is like those dandelion fluff, but on steroids. The cottonwood fluff is much more substantial. You called. So the you of this poem is kind of like a past love, a fossil from the past, just like the whalebone is kind of this reminder of the past. It's this physical evidence of the past, where nothing seems to last, right? And that line is about how our relationship to the past is always changing. Our memories are flawed, and the past is always kind of changing, both in our minds. And even though we can write things down and record the past, still things can get distorted. Dead is as dead does not sleep. So this is one of my tendencies in poetry. I like, because poetry doesn't really have to follow the rules of grammar as much. I do a lot of kind of syntactical experimentation where the phrase dead is as dead does is a complete kind of sentence, kind of equating being is with doing or action. And that phrase kind of runs into the next one, which is the dead does not sleep, right? So this says that even though people and animals and plants can be dead, their kind of memories remained, and there's some kind of remainder of them on the earth. Where the ants crawl, so ants are tiny, and the willows weep. Willows are quite large, and I love weeping willow trees. They're quite majestic, I find. Sometimes, so this goes back to the present, I can hear acorns fall. So in this forest, you hear strange sounds, and I figured them out. It's just the sound of acorns falling and hitting leaves. I tried to find something to say. So this is on the phone call. Obviously, a cell phone call because I'm in a forest. But my mind was empty where it lay, so I was kind of taken aback by this call, so I didn't know exactly what to say. We traded a memory, so something we shared together. We talked about it. That kind of relieved the silence. And then I get into the particulars of that memory, which is this person made little wooden figurines, wooden birds, and smoothed them out with emery boards. I think you couldn't think fast enough to shake the silence. So this is not an easy phone call. We share a memory, but there's long kind of silences that, and even when we're talking, the kind of silence is hidden in the words as well, like on our words baked, just like the bones of the whale have blanched or baked in the sun. The way we parted last with a scowl and a huff. So this is obviously I had some kind of fight with this person. And that explains part of the awkwardness of this conversation. So an owl hoos, that gives you the time of day. It's kind of approaching twilight. Owls are nocturnal, so the owls are coming out. Fast broken, so the owl has a mouse and it's about to eat its breakfast. And there's a word play on fast, like holding something fast, holding it tight, but at the same time breaking your fast, which is breakfast. Try though I might, I can't articulate the way your name hangs in the air when it's said. So this is kind of a memory of other conversations with people that we both know. When they mention you, it's kind of this experience of just that name kind of is like echoes in my head, and it's even though like the mention of you is brief, it kind of creates an interior response that is not as brief as just the simple mentioning of your name. It's difficult for me to express like the way I miss this person, or why, like what even happened that we did lost contact with each other. The fight wasn't even that big of a deal, and just your present deserts mine in this my hour of need. It's just like I wish, kind of just me wishing that this person would have been there during moments of need. So, and I'm trying to explain my interest in the fantastic and the the kind of things that draw you out of your kind of normal everyday state of mind, which is goes back to the first stanza of these whale bones that are in a forest. Like, what? Our priorities in place fruitful. So this deals with our kind of lives going in different directions. So we're talking on the phone about our lives, and fruitful just means productive, and they also grow in trees. I'm in a forest, etc., etc. I want to overcome the inertia, so that's just me feeling like I'm kind of stuck in a rut and I want to get out of it. I want to overcome the hamartia. Hamartia in Greek tragedy, especially Aristotle's aesthetics, is kind of the tragic flaw of the hero that he has to overcome in order to become a hero. I want to become the full root, the part truth, the quilled cheroot. Roots, of course, get back to the tree imagery that runs continuously throughout the poem. And the quelled cheroot, a cheroot is like a little cigar. Quelled just means it's been put out. So like that's like a fire going out, like the fire of the love of this person, but we're trying to reconnect. So that's like relighting up the cheroot, I guess. Pan's flute. So Pan, of course, is the Greek god of the forest. Muted in the glistening dawn. So Pan, of course, is often depicted playing a pan flute, which you probably know what it is. You know Zamfir, he plays the pan flute. Muted in the glistening dawn. So the muted in the glistening dawn, to me, that's what I was intending there was the senses kind of competing with each other. We have this beautiful sound and this beautiful sight, but I always kind of think art is amazing and art is like one of the things that gives our lives meaning, but at the same time I don't think art really compares to the beauty of nature. I don't think it really gets, it rarely achieves the beauty of nature. To not know the different, so these are just kind of, this is like a wish list. I am kind of tired of thinking always about what's right and what's wrong and the decisions that entails, to sing songs and after feel the need to invent. So songs are creativity, and even in the singing of them, after it just kind of leaves me empty and I still need to create. The pawn in the process of the castle becomes an open question. So this is a chess metaphor. The castle is a special move in chess where the king and the rook kind of jump over each other. It's the only move in chess where you move two pieces at one time, and it becomes an open question. So the specialness of the castle move is kind of like a question that doesn't really want a specific answer. It's just to kind of stimulate our further inquiry, right? Or further learning. I became of my vanity a vassal. A vassal is kind of like in medieval kind of social organization. A vassal is, of course, someone subordinate to a lord. So I'm kind of subordinate to my own vanity and worn. This wornness or wariness comes from just this attention and the power of my vanity or whatever. And the vanity is also implied to be somehow at the root of the conflict between me and this person I love. Perched in the bastion of civilized dismay, that just has to do with my, I guess, cynicism. Seeking remembrance across the ages. So this gets back to the tension between personal memory and historical memory, and beyond even that, kind of like even larger time scales. Leaking from the sores. So there's a pun on sores, right? Leaking, I kind of mean from wounds, right? From this conflict. But soars also means like flying high, like the cottonwood fluff, caused by the pages on which these oars. So now the oars are being compared to the words of the poem that paddle with grace and rages against the pores through which pours. Lots of puns going on here. I get that from reading a lot of Shakespeare. Shakespeare was kind of the master of puns. I don't think he really has a equivalent in the English language for puns. Rages against the pores through which pores, so pores of the skin. And pores of the skin are like holes. They're like our skin is the boundary between our interior selves and the exterior world, and through which pours the light of the universe. So even though we don't make energy from light like plants, we still kind of, light is still very important to us in things like mood regulation and vitamin D production. So the light of the universe. So this brings the kind of particular moment into a much bigger perspective. Blowing back into our faces. Switch between what ails you. Quilt by looped stitch. So this is a very dense stanza. What ails you is of course these kind of the pains brought up by memory. That is kind of like what is ailing me in this poem. Quilt by looped stitch. And that just kind of refers to the way I'm kind of piecing together my present and past experience, like sewing a quilt. The garlic pungency toward the plagues during which the magus, so a magus is a magician or some kind of mystic. So garlic, of course, in superstition, it keeps away vampires or bloodsuckers. And oddly enough, when I was planting trees, I was looking for non-bug spray related ways to get the bugs away from me, because bug spray contains this chemical called DEET, which is not only carcinogenic, but if you use it every day for like 2 weeks, you can develop symptoms of psychosis as well. And so when I was tree planting in Hearst, which is on the last highway, in the last road in Ontario. Beyond that, there was kind of no roads. It's on the same highway as Kapuskasing, actually. So I was planting trees up there, and of course the mosquitoes, horseflies, and black flies are just horrible. You have this cloud of insects around your head. So I did some I looked up on the internet to find some way to keep the bugs away, because I didn't want to use DEET every day for that long. I was up there for 2 months, so that's just too much DEET. So I was actually just taking garlic. I was swallowing whole garlic cloves, and that helped a little, actually. So the plague. So of course a lot of plagues are carried by mosquitoes and bugs. During which the magus draws in the hot pitch. So hot pitch, of course, is like this thick black goo, a bowl of glass luminescence. So before a glass is glass, it's kind of like this black goo, right? Before it kind of dries and clears up. And then we have this list of adjectives: luminescent, so that's light, catching, pearlescent, so like a pearl, and iridescent, so iridescent is the quality. You know that, though. That kind of glinting, metallic, bright color, twirling and twirling in a hot liquid. So For somehow I got to a memory of watching blowing glass and watching somebody blow glass. Managing the quiddities of scent trailing in the streams of the wind. So this gets back to noticing the wind in the trees, and I'm having smells in the present kind of mixing with this. Now, squid eating the prey with bird beaks. I'm fascinated by biology, and so I use a lot of like animal and plants as kind of metaphors and more literally. And I just always think nature is fascinating in the way that certain structures are repeated in vastly different organisms, right? Like a finch's beak and a squid's beak look almost exactly the same. And with the ink, so the squid uses ink as kind of a defense mechanism, but ink is also used in writing, of course. That comes and squeaks through the depths. So this is like a meta. Squids live in, especially giant squid, or they live in extremely deep water. And this is like me talking about how this poem is trying to explore these depths of memory and loss and this particular relationship of this person who called me out of the blue. The Whale Road, which is a famous kenning from the first known written poem. No, not the first known, but an epic poem of the English tradition, Beowulf. So in Beowulf, they didn't really use rhyme and meter in poetry too much. They, as structuring principles, they used alliteration much more as kind of a structuring principle. And they also used this literary device called a kenning, which is describing something that's just everyday, like the sea, but describing it in a very kind of fanciful way. So, like a whale road, right? Rather than just referring to the sea. This sea is now a forest. So this gets back to the beginning of the whale bones in the forest. Like, how on earth did these whale bones get here? I opened through my thoughts of you, the best part of my... So this is about memory. Like, I've hung up the phone now. The conversation is over, and I'm thinking about this person. And I'm like, wow, I'm really glad this person was in my life. And perhaps they will rejoin my life in some way. Without adieu, of course. I'm a restless person, so that's the without rest. And without adieu is like... goodbye is a funny thing for me. I have a hard time saying goodbye. I don't like saying goodbye. And part of the reason for that is because like, people are still kind of in my memory, right? So that's what that's all about. So I hope this explanation helped kind of you understand my thinking processes as I'm writing. And if you like this kind of explanation and want more of it in the future, let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to make these accessible to everybody. All right. Thank you for joining me. And I hope you're having a great day.